Welcome back to the Haitians in Medicine podcast, brought to you by the Speak Up Network. Today we have Mr. Henson Destin, and he is a second-year medical student over at the University of Miami. So, Mr. Henson, let's talk about your story. So, how did you get to where you are now?
All right. So, like she said, my name is Henson Destin, and I am a second-year medical student at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. Prior to that, I graduated from the University of Miami undergrad school. So I'm a double cane at this point. How I got to where I am. So I was born in Haiti, spent some time in Haiti, grew up in Haiti, came here to America. And at first, I wasn't medicine-based at all. I was very focused on business. I was focused on like, okay, I'm going to get rich. I'm going to do this. I'm going to make the family proud, etc. Now, most Haitian families, it is very lawyer, doctor, engineer.
Oh, definitely.
And growing up, it was always like, the three. I was like, okay, like, oh, you got to do that. But my parents were more, I'm going to say, open. So for them, it wasn't, although like the rest of my family was just like, oh, what kind of doctor are you going to be? Are you going to law school? Or are you going to become an engineer? For them, it was more so, you can do what you want. Just what you want has to be something big.
That's something I hear a lot.
And my dad studied econ while he was in college. So my dad was more so along the business aspect of
Oh, you went to college here or in Haiti?
No, in Haiti. But he studied econ, so he was more so he respected the field of business in a way. So for me, growing up, I wanted to focus on the business aspect. Then my mom got pregnant when I was in high school. And while she was pregnant, like a traumatic event kind of happened where it did shock her, and it, as doctors say, it affected the baby a lot. So when my little brother was born, he was born with like a myriad of different problems that honestly and truly did affect him. So for the first couple months of my life, of his life, and almost up to the first year, we practically lived at Johns Hopkins over in Baltimore, where he was going through different like therapies, different procedures, different operations, because of everything that was going on. And my family is a very religious family, so we prayed nonstop. But at the same time, physically what I saw all the time were doctors and surgeons and different people who were coming in and out and talking to us and delivering news. And it was a very stressful time on my family. My mom cried all the time. My dad, you could tell he wasn't himself. So although like my dad didn't cry, I could tell that if he wasn't himself. Me and my other little brother, he was young, so he was more so like enjoying the time away from home as if it was kind of like a mini vacation. But like for me, it did affect me. And the biggest thing I remember is how, I don't want to say dependent, but how dependent we became on these different doctors, and how they could easily change the mood of my family with good news or bad news. So at the end of it, everything turned out well, and my little brother is perfectly fine. In fact, he is blooming, flourishing, thriving by God's graces. But throughout all of that, I remember the different doctors coming into the room. I remember them telling us good news. I remember how physically, like with like substance, even though it may have been them working through God or something, they physically like helped mend my family together. Like they saved him. They gave us the good news. They made my mom happy. They did all that. So realizing that these are the people who basically their life's work is to actually like help others get better. Their life's work is to give like children or babies who haven't done anything wrong to the world, like actually let them live the life they were supposed to live, while at the same time comforting and making sure that families are taken care of, and making sure that like families aren't really impacted by this. Coming out of that, it was like one of those click situations where I came out and I was just like, this is what I want to do. I do want to be that person who can go to a family and be like, your child's okay, everything's going to be fine. And then watch the family celebrate that good news together. So, and then from there, it was just like, all right, let's join the pre-med track. College came around, science and all this other stuff. And
you didn't get weeded out in the first class?
It was close. It was close, if I'm going to say the least. My first bio class it sent me for a loop because I I remember my teacher. His name was Dr. Gaines from University of Miami, and I heard so many horror stories. However, his 8 a.m. class, which was also the worst decision I made.
Oh, Lord.
8 a.m. bio was the only thing that really fit into my schedule and still let me kind of semblance keep it how I wanted to keep it. So I took it. I did not enjoy it.
You barely, your grade touched the hem.
I definitely hit a low point, waking up at 8 a.m. for something like that. However, it was the big bet. I would say it was a good transition to college for me because it made me start on the right foot. Like, it made me start like actually caring about my grade. It made me start college, trying to study, and et cetera, et cetera. So, got through that, somehow made it through Orgo. Even worse, I somehow made it through physics, which I
don't know how, like,
I can't believe that to this day. But, and now I guess many, many years later, here I am.
So why, like, okay, so you said you went to a private school, you're a double king, right? So why private school and then private school again? Like, is your future pockets going to thank you for this?
So I came to the University of Miami originally because that is the school that I felt the most connected to. So I came to UM because it felt right. And of course, you know what they say, undergrad, you can go anywhere, but grad school, kind of, that's where you kind of like chase a name. UM was a big name, but at the same time, UM felt like the right school for me. And it also helped that, scholarships came along. So like I wasn't shouldering the big burden of the private school.
I look at the prices, I just die.
Yeah, I did too until I also saw the price deducted. Then I was like, oh, okay.
Not that bad.
So I did come to the University of Miami because it felt right. Now, while I was applying to medical school, because I'm not from Miami, I'm not from Florida, I decided I wanted to try other places.
Where are you originally from? Well, not Haiti, but like prior to that, where were you originally from?
In America. So I went to school in Delaware, like Lower County, Delaware. But I basically spent time around the DMV, around like the Maryland areas.
I'm very familiar with DMV.
Yeah. So when I was applying to medical school, I wanted to leave Florida. I was like, okay, maybe Atlanta, maybe go back to the DMV, but I don't want to be in Florida again because I want to experience something else. I don't want to just be stuck here. Plus, if I had stayed in Florida, I'd have been 9 years in Florida.
Oh my God.
And I'm like, at that point, it's a home. So I applied to all these different schools, and UM wasn't actually my first choice for medical school. But UM was the first school that gave me an interview. I interviewed at UM. I sent my application in, and within like a month and a half, they reached out with an interview date. So I went to interview, my very first interview. And although I was nervous, I was glad it was my first interview because it was an interview at a place that I already knew. I was already comfortable with, so it would get me in the mood. And as soon as I walked into my interview, and not only the feeling of comfort, but just realizing that this is home, it changed everything in my mind. And I was just like, why would I want to leave? Like, I walked in and I realized that this is the family I grew over all these years. These are the people who have supported me for 4 years. Like, the people who welcomed me to, like, the whole Miller School of Interview. Like, these are people who for 4 years have been there for me, have shaped me into the pre-med I was, have actually like helped enhance my portfolio to the point where I could apply to medical school. So it became something where I was sitting there and I realized how much I enjoyed it here, how much I loved it here, and how much every single person in that room like meant something to me. How this was the person who read over my personal statement. This was the person who, like, when things didn't go right for me, I called and still helped me out. And yes, there was that feeling of comfort, which probably played a big role looking back on it. However, besides that feeling of comfort, it was more so the feeling of this is home, this is family. This place shaped me into me, and the Henson that I am today is a lot. Came as a result of most of the experiences I went through, because UM shaped me, and I love UM for all of that. And so as a result of that, once I got the interview and I left the interview, I knew that would I be accepted, regardless of my other acceptances, I was going to accept UM just because of that feeling. And once I left, I knew that I couldn't leave.
So it isn't a bad idea to go back to where your undergrad is.
I thought it would be, but not in this situation. And I don't regret it at all. Like, I actually do love UM, and I'm glad I chose to stay because this is a great place for me.
Definitely. So what were some of like the credentials that you had that made you qualified to even get into a school like UM? Because I know some people like that I know personally that have tried, went and got a master's, did all this stuff, and they did not get in.
I will say for UM's sake, they are a very holistic type of person. Like, for them, it's not all about the scores. It isn't. Yes, the scores will only help you. So if you can, please have the scores. But it isn't just about the grades, and it isn't just about like the test scores and like the MCAT and stuff like that. Like, they care about what have you done, not only for yourself, but what have you done for others, and how well you kind of like formed your repertoire of skills. So coming in, I was very involved in undergrad.
I know like, that was one of the things I was like, it's when I see people involved as much as you do and they make it, I'm just like, damn, how?
Yeah, undergrad was a lot for me. Looking back on it, I probably did too much. I was one of those people where like I came in, and if I was even remotely interested in it, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Next thing I know, midway through sophomore year, I'm looking back and I'm just like, why am I doing all this stuff? But by that point, it was too late. So I was very involved in undergrad. And because of that, I did gain a lot of like different leadership skills and stuff like that. So there was that. I was also very involved in the community, whether it was shadowing or whether it was like volunteering or whether it was like actually like doing things with like different nonprofits. When it comes to medicine itself, I threw myself into a bunch of different medical aspects, whether it was like summer programs, whether it was just doing different things in the hospital, different physicianship experiences. And then I did have the grades and the scores to match it. The MCAT was a miracle for me, and it went surprisingly well. So when it comes down to that aspect of it, the grades do matter, but I would say that you should also focus on trying to get all the different experiences that make you as a person more, not only relatable to everything else going on, but you as a person more than just numbers on a page. Because if you can say that you were a missionary and you did all this, a missionary with like above average scores is a lot better looking than some superb stellar person with just scores but not really much else to put on.
I understand. So what was the hardest part about the entrance process?
So I'm gonna, I guess, take away the MCAT because the MCAT is part of the entrance process, but it is a hellhole of its own. So outside of the MCAT, the entrance process is more tedious than it is hard. Like, it is abnormally tedious. Like, you have the primary application. You go through the primary application, and the most tedious part of that is the personal statement. So with the personal statement, it took me months to get my personal statement right. And lots of edits, lots of people turning it back to me telling me this sucks or this is trash, try again. I've had, because I didn't really know how to go about a personal statement. So that was the most tedious part. Then you finish the personal statement, you finish your application, send in your MCAT scores, and then you have the waiting game, and then you start getting secondaries. And the secondaries are just essay after essay after essay. So I think for like 2 months, I basically woke up and just wrote essays all day, went to sleep.
Oh my gosh.
And then following that is just the interview process, which is more time consuming and money consuming than it is hard. So the entrance process is long and it's really tedious, but I wouldn't say that outside of the MCAT, it's extremely hard. But there is a lot that goes in it, and it is very detailed, and it's stressful because you do know that any little mistake can cost you
the whole acceptance.
All of it, yeah. So
how do you feel like you're different now than when you like just started, like back then at that time?
I started my pre-med journey or started my medicine journey?
Both.
My pre-med journey, I was looking back on it, I was naive. Very, very much naive. I didn't really know what I was getting into. medicine seemed like, this is what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to save people. I want to do this. But it just looked like, you were in a white coat telling people what was wrong with them, fixing them, etc. Now it's like you appreciate everything that goes into becoming a doctor.
Yes.
You appreciate every bit of schooling, everything that they had to go through, all the time that they sacrifice, social life, relationships, everything that they put to the side in order to actually get to where they are. And so even when I first started med school, I didn't even appreciate how hard it was to learn medicine. I didn't appreciate how many hours they put into studying, learning things, how much they had to remember. I didn't appreciate that someone could come to you and listen to you basically rattle off a bunch of different symptoms that don't really correlate with each other, and you don't know what that has to do with anything, and come up with some
you got to piece
out
it
of
together.
the box diagnosis to tell you this is what's wrong with you. And that is something that comes through experience. So I would say that the biggest difference between then and now, as far as myself, is just experience, like actual experience with that. And then with that came a sense of appreciation and gratitude. And then knowing that this isn't to be taken for granted, because people do trust you. Like when they come in and they tell you, I have a headache, like, it's not just a headache. Most of the time, it's not just a headache. But, like, they actually do trust you to figure out what's wrong with them and to potentially save them from whatever is going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I can, definitely attest to that, because even now, working as a nurse, when someone's like, oh, is this normal? And because you've seen it on a lot of patients, you say it's normal, and it eases their pain. Like, you can see that they're feeling at ease compared to, you ask your friend, hey, man, does this look normal?
Yeah, the trust is wild. Like, even as a student, if you tell them something, they're going to be like,
I would be I'm just even myself being on the other side, I'm much more appreciative of where I was before and where I am now, because I'm like, that person then, they didn't understand. Now I can understand both of them. So when I see people who are pre-nursing or pre-med, and I'm just like, yeah, you're going to be on this side, but appreciate this side also, because when you don't know something, you're not going to freak out. But once you start learning the symptoms, and you're like, damn, I felt a little, I didn't sleep last night. I feel a little insomnia. I think I'm going to die.
That's also a big thing. Trying to self-diagnose yourself is the biggest problem. A little ache and pain becomes a crazy thing.
That's how I feel all the time. So so you said you're very involved in undergrad. How are you able to be so social and keep your grades up?
In undergrad? To be honest, undergrad was something where I forsaked sleep a lot.
Oh, yeah, same here.
I didn't really know much about what sleep was, but also in undergrad, cramming worked. So that's the one thing I had to really throw away when I did get to med school, because cramming does not work, and you will be slammed. However, in undergrad, I could do all the things because I prioritized them in undergrad, and I wanted to do them. And once I signed up for them, it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it nice, et cetera, et cetera. However, I could leave studying till the 2-3 days beforehand and still get an A, because it was fine. It wasn't as much material. And even when the material was hard, it was always doable. You would forsake sleep a lot, but it was doable. So when it came down to that part, it was more so it wasn't more so I can't say I had the perfect balance. I knew when to start working, when to study, when to do this. It was just, I thank God for this every day. I had a very good, probably above average memory. So when I crammed, it stuck. And yes, there was a very big extermination of all the material within the 2 days after the test, but it worked to get the grades I needed to get.
I understand. So, okay, so you said that you're in your second year, and that means you have 2 years left, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So what are some of the things that people don't know as a second year that you're experiencing right now? For example, I know you're going to be taking the USMLE, which is, what does the acronym stand for? I'm not going to lie. I'm going to pull it up just in case we both don't know it.
United States Medical Licensing Exam. I'm not too sure, but something like that.
Oh. Yeah. Okay. Well, so what is that exam? Okay. What is that exam, and what else? What else are stuff that you have to do now that you're a second year?
So it's a series of exams, more or less. The first one I'm going to be taking is step 1, which is taken at the basically the end of your second year before you go into clinicals. And with that one, it's all the information you learned within your first 2 years, all the book work, all the academic stuff you put together on one major exam in order to, I guess, test whether or not you are ready to move on to the clinical stuff. And that exam, it comes first. Then comes step 2, which has 2 parts to it, the clinical skills and then the clinical knowledge.
Clinical skills? Wait, what kind of skills?
I think it is more so like what I would call like the physicianship skills. So coming in, taking a history, doing like the physical exams, doing all the different parts of the exam, the cardiac, the neuro exam, all these different things, and then potentially like collecting all the signs and symptoms, maybe like getting information on labs and stuff, and deciding like, okay, this patient might have this, that, and the third. Like,
I thought they were like teaching you how to intubate. I'm like, damn.
I don't think we learned those skills.
That's why I was like, wait, what kind of skills? No, because I did skills lab for like a whole year, and that's where we learned how to take care of the ports, how to put in the catheters, how to do all that. So that's why I was like, wait, what kind of skills do you guys learn in there?
I think those are more so like residency skills, especially, well, not all of them, because I know some of them are kind of more attached to the nurses. So it's more skills you would
definitely not starting IVs.
I've seen a doctor start an IV, so I'm sure that
I've never seen one start an IV. That would be a sight to see.
I've seen a doctor start an IV, and it was something.
And get it the first time?
Yeah, it was actually, he snapped. He didn't even, the man didn't even blink. Like, the man did it with practically. I
have to see this. I can't believe this. You're hearing it first right here on the Haitians in Medicine podcast. Henson witnessed a doctor start an IV and get it on the first try.
He was an older doctor, so I'm not too sure if it's something like where recent doctors don't really do it as much, but I've
never seen a doctor
he did it, and he didn't even blink while doing it. He didn't ask for anything. He was just like, hand me that. So I did walk away. So it was interesting. But I don't think it's those type of skills that we take in CK. I think I'm going to leave those more up to your expertise.
Oh, gosh. So, okay, what kind of, have you decided what specialty you want to go into yet?
Sort of, kind of. So I know I want to do something procedural. Mm-hmm. That is something that is very important to me. I do want to use my hands, but I really just want to escape kind of like, rounding and all the other stuff that comes with internal med. However,
anesthesiologists still have to round.
It's not like internal med. Internal med is just like, it hits me different. It doesn't hit my soul in the way that I want it to hit. However, first and foremost, my biggest interest right now is spine surgery. Mm-hmm. I'm really enjoying spine surgery. I enjoy every different aspect about it. Talking to different spine surgeons, it's something that I truly can see myself doing, and something that I can tell would go along the lines of like making a large impact. Obviously, because the story I shared, whatever I want to go into, I also want it to have like a pediatrics component, because I do want to help alleviate that burden, not only on families, but to also help children who aren't in a position to not have their whole lives ahead of them. Secondary to spine surgery, I really do like anesthesiology, actually. Mm-hmm. So one of my mentors now is an anesthesiologist, and everything, talking to him, seeing what he went through, what he's doing now, it is something that like encourages me on the path of anesthesiology. Plus, anesthesiology also allows me at the time to maintain that good work-life balance, a family, and also pursue other aspects and aspirations. And then finally, I am thinking just like going through general surgery, and then specializing or doing a fellowship in like pediatrics or adolescents, because that, again, is also important to me. And then my final thing is sports med, because it's like taking care of athletes is a big thing. However, spine surgery and anesthesiology are the biggest two that I am leaning towards, and the biggest two that I would say that I would have no regrets whether I ended up in them.
All right. So I know that, one, we all have strikes against us, one, especially when it comes to being black and trying to be in the medical field. One, we're black. Two, we're Haitian. This is not our native country. Neither is it our native tongue. And 3, we're like the lowest percentage, even lower than Black people. There's even less Haitian doctors and less Haitians, like less people in these specialties. So like, what is your experience that you would say that you have currently as a Haitian man trying to make it into like the field at all?
So that's honestly shaped a lot of my like coming into medicine per se. Like I did come from Haiti, and I did come to the United States. So first and foremost, you had to get over the language barrier, which was hell on its own. English is not a language anyone should ever have to learn. That language doesn't make sense.
You said Kush?
I said English is not a language.
I was like, wait, what language is that?
English is not a language anyone should ever have to learn. So first, getting over the language barrier, having to learn English and having to like transition through that was a problem. Then comes the problem of immigration. And immigration is something that plagues a lot of different Haitians.
Oh, it does.
And for me, coming in with like visa status and everything, especially during my collegiate years, you can't attend medical school unless you are like a permanent resident or a citizen. So while a lot
of people don't know that. A lot of people do not know that.
Yeah. So I couldn't even take my MCAT until everything worked out. So for me, that also gave me this unexpected gap here while I was waiting for my papers to work out for me to get my permanent residency, which was 6-7 years in the making.
That's what a lot of people don't understand when they're like, oh, we're here taking their jobs and we're here doing this and we're here doing that. It takes like a very long time to get your papers. And even when you get your papers at that time, like a lot of people, it's not even that easy. Like my dad came here in 93. He did not get his papers until like 93. Mind you, I wasn't even born yet. He didn't get his papers until I was like 5-6 years old.
Yeah.
So that's 5-6 years plus 2 years. So like, oh man, can't do math right now. What's going on with me this morning? 7-8 years before he finally like got his papers. And then he even pushed so he can get citizenship for like my siblings so that they can become citizens. So it's just like, it's not easy for us. It is an uphill battle every day just for us. Like just having us here and being in these positions are miracles in itself.
Yeah, it took a lot. And also now looking back on it, I can say that gap year helped me to grow. And that gap year helped me to actually like transition and become more so cemented in who I was. That gap year was a lot, and because it was unexpected. And having to go through immigration and different immigration problems, not being sure of what was going to happen to you in terms of school, not being sure if you really just had to change professions entirely, was very stressful in that aspect of it. And then although Miami does really well with like the Haitian population, as in they have more Haitians in most things, most of the situations I know and I'm familiar with, there's not that many Haitians. So for me, growing up, it was just like, okay, you are the oddball. And let's say Haitians became popular, more accepted around like 2017, late 2016. But before that, I
think because that's only if you grow up in a place that doesn't have a lot of Haitians. I grew up in a place that had a lot of Haitians, like where the school, well, for the majority part, we had to push and fight for it. The school celebrated Haitian Flag Day, like we had the Haitian Compa Festival in Miami. Like we had all of that, like that celebrated us, that made us like popular. But I remember the time when it wasn't like, I remember the time when it wasn't popular. I remember the time where it was popular, and like,
it was growing up, it wasn't popular. So coming in, and one, you already don't speak the language. So the fact that like once you start talking to your parents, everyone looks at you sideways was already a problem. But until I came to Miami, it wasn't something that you really were like jumping for joy to tell someone. And then things changed, of course, in college, and then it started becoming more so accepted. It started becoming more so popular. People started understanding that it is a different culture, it's a different language, but it's not something to be scared of. So that kind of changed the game. But even now, it's not like I can say that in the average environment, there'll be more than like 1 or 2 Haitians around. In medical school, fortunately, I guess because it is Miami, there is more than 1 Haitian. So you have that connection. However, it's still like very few and far between, and it is very much so in the minority. But that sense of community is also very strong, especially down here. So that's something that also helps a lot. However, as far as the Haitian experience itself, It hasn't been an easy one because not only are you working to prove yourself as a Black person to everyone else around, but you're also working to prove yourself to other Black people as a Haitian person that you are not only just as good, but you're also comparable. Especially when you do start speaking another language, most people aren't too fond of it.
Which is very annoying, but...
But, yeah.
So what advice would you give for someone who is listening and is like, oh my gosh, I'm in the same position as him, and like, how did he make it? So what advice would you give for someone like that's like behind you that knows that, like, that's a similar situation as you?
The biggest piece of advice I would give, and the first thing that I think you should really focus on, is your why. Knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it is probably the biggest key to success. So realizing that medicine is a very long journey. Trying to get where you're going is going to take you time, and it will take you a lot of time. You are going to sacrifice a lot. You will forsake a lot of things, and it's not a journey that just ends once you make it, because it only keeps going. I thought getting to medical school was going to be it. I get to medical school, I realize it's super hard. It's 4 years, and then they tell me, oh, there's something called residency afterwards, and I'm like, oh God. Then you get to residency and you realize there's more. Then you become an attending and you realize you still have to take recertification exams, and you start to keep learning. Medicine doesn't stop. So if this is what you want to do, you have to actually know your why. Why do you want to do this? What keeps you going? What do you see in the future that will make this all worth it? Because if it's something that's not strong enough or something that's going to falter, switch. Because for your sanity, for your sake, you should probably find something that would make you more so happy. Medicine is one of those like specialties, one of those fields where I would say unless you want to be here, you shouldn't be here. Because it will take a lot out of you.
It will. It will.
So biggest advice I would say is find your why. And then the second piece of advice I would give anyone is once you find your why, find someone who supports your why. And then not someone who's just going to go along with everything you do, but someone who's willing to like slap you upside the head if you don't do it. And I had that. There was a point where I felt a little entitled, where things were going my way. I was literally skating, as in like I wasn't doing much, but I was getting like these perfect grades. Everything was going right. My extracurricular life was perfect, and I started feeling entitled. I started feeling on top of the world, and I started taking things for granted. And she, which is another reason why I chose UM, she's in the Office of Diversity at UM, and she sat me down and had a talk. And not only did she have a talk, she gave me a reality check. The reality check I needed to realize that things aren't just given to me. And not only are they not given to me, that because of my situation, I do have to work harder. I am a Black man. So while I may be succeeding here, this success doesn't mean anything in the long run. And that reality check honestly set me back down to earth. And it actually made me work harder. And if it wasn't for that, I don't know if I would have actually like made it, because I was starting to get complacent. I was starting to feel too comfortable with where I was. And so I needed that person to tell me that you haven't done anything. What's in your head isn't what's actually going around. So your why, and then someone who's here to give you another dose of you ain't nothing. So those are the two things that I would suggest to anyone who does want to be here and who is willing to work to get here.
I understand. So I know you have your own platform. So let the people know where to find you on your platform.
Oh, yeah. So I do have a YouTube channel. It is my name, Henson Destin, Henson, last name Destin, Dstine. And on the YouTube, I do cover a bunch of different parts of medicine. I cover daily vlogs, or not daily, but like vlogs throughout my journey through medical school, advice for different pre-medical students. So You Want to Be series, where I do introduce other aspects of medicine. And then another series where I'm going to compare different major medical schools from like student testimonials. So if you're interested
that's actually really good.
Yeah, feel free to check it out on YouTube. And then there, you'll also see my Instagram and etc. in case anyone wants to reach out.
All right. Oh my gosh, that's really good.
Thank you.
So, just to recap, today we had Mr. Henson Destin, and we spoke about his journey making it through medical school and figuring out what is life after his second year. And make sure you follow us on the Haitians in Medicine on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube at Blood Knows Best. And when the episode loads, thank you. Bye.